Let's call to order the zoning bylaw committee meeting for March 4th, 2024. Alphabetical roll call, please.
Clark Brewer here.
I'm Callahan here.
Michael Dickey here.
David Farag here.
Okay. All right,
Well,
so
I've got to run at 7:30.
yeah, all right, I'll try to make this quick. I'm not feeling great. So just quickly, this morning, panic email went out. Glenn Pratt was questioning whether we were including a cemetery plot in the zoning district. He identified the district and it wasn't on our list, and I assured him that it wasn't part of the district. I think he just assumed that because he was looking at, a half mile around the entire station, not the fact that the district is pretty much on just one side of the station. So that panic was averted. It's like last minute, it's already been to town. It's already with the state and everything else. Anyway, so that was averted. All right, so for tonight, let me screen share. All right, last week, when we looked at the two reorganization articles, we seemed to be okay with the first one, which is consolidating the articles themselves. On the districts, I circulated some more stuff, a copy of the map. Actually on it. Let me see how quickly I can get it. I'm sorry, I should have called it up before. And everybody look at the map in color. It's
You talking about the housing choice map?
no, not that map, the zoning map. I'll find it. Where was it? Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. All right, let me share screen, and there it is. Share. I'm actually getting somewhat adept at this thing. It's scary. All right, so let's see this. So there's the map, and on the consolidation on 3A, this is the existing highway business in red. And this was highway business at one point in time. This is the technology business district. This is zoned as light industry. And so we'd be essentially switching these two back to what they once were.
Yeah, I mean, the technology business is basically the whole footprint of Avalon, isn't it?
Now it's more of the landfill and the hardware
landfill.
store.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It wasn't designed to actually attract technology. It was designed to stop something.
I remember that. Yes. Yeah.
So, and then down in the harbor, the inset there. So we have light industry here. The waterfront business is blue. This area, the hotel site is blue. Across the street, those buildings on Elm Street are what's left of downtown business. So the idea would be make this all blue. And then we had already long ago decided, a couple of months ago, decided we didn't want to see expansion of
The overlay. Yeah.
the mixed use. So that would disappear. And then in the proposal is to include this little corner of orange, which is the Legion site. And then I think you have to go up outside the inset.
The only question I had on that was, and I was trying to look into it, was if we change the light industry to the downtown, or excuse me, the waterfront,
Yeah.
what would they be able to do afterwards that they couldn't do today?
Nothing.
It wouldn't expand the uses there at all from light industry.
No, because we'd be adopting the uses of waterfront business. And then I showed you the charts, the Article 4 we changed, now going into broader categories. Article 4 of uses, really has expanded more the opportunities for different uses, and on the dimensional table, there is no difference between the waterfront business dimensions and the downtown business dimensions. So we'd simply be getting rid of it. Light industry, though, attracts a whole different thing that is not only not feasible down there, but is not something we would want to attract right there on the waterfront. So that would be waterfront business and basically would allow the marina to continue in existence the way it is. As well as, I can't see on that if the Haggerty property, no, the Haggerty property is in the open space. Well, no, actually, the Haggerty property is probably right there. That last orange one. That's fine.
Yeah, and what's that under?
That's RB.
Yeah, oh, interesting.
That's fine. I don't consider the Haggerty property anymore to be a commercial use, more of a municipal, community use, so it's fine.
I think Haggerty is open space. It's the
Yeah.
bright green.
Yeah, it might be right in
Chartreuse.
here. Yeah,
Chartreuse color. On the right side, as you go down Parker, that's the
yeah, you see
industrial. On
see
the left
Parker,
side
yeah.
is town-owned open space district, even though
Yeah,
there's some buildings on
it's
it.
it's either in the open space or it's this last RB project parcel, but I think it is in the open space, so that's fine.
Yeah.
The light industry is simply the marina, and I remember it was always an issue about whether the peninsula that goes out there where all those slips are was RB or industrial. So that's what it comes down to, and there's no real functional difference, not in the harbor, between the uses and the dimensions. On 3A, the technology business district has much larger dimensional requirements. It has a 200-foot frontage requirement, where the rest of it is, I believe the harbor business is 50-foot frontage. So, in theory, it's making redevelopment more possible, not less possible, just because of the demands of the technology business zone. And remember, our overlay is going to be in here and up to one property on Crocker Lane, and then just beyond Crocker here to Situate Hills. So this is where the overlay would be for the housing, and then.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't think this is a complicated thing. The only complicated thing is just moving everything into the new organization. I mean, and I'm more than halfway through that. So.
And the only other questions I know it was talked about, what about Beechwood and West Corner?
All right, so yeah, so then
and I say that because the meeting's being taped, so if people, while we're looking over the map, people might have questions about those too, because they've been mentioned before.
So the third part of this is, what are those? Those are downtown. So here's the village, which used to be downtown business, and when it was switched, it kept the same boundaries. And then West Corner has a little pocket of downtown business, which is the site that burned down, whatever is being put there, and then the restaurant. And then Beechwood is also a pocket of downtown business, which, is the property we just permitted for redevelopment on this side, but it also goes up, surprisingly, on Doan Street all the way up to the stream. And that's because right here near the corner, although these are residences now, there was a store of some sort.
Yeah.
The second property in, there's an old building still there. So, this project here on this site, we've already permitted as a mixed use. I would, again, so the concept here is, again, to get rid of downtown business as a vestige of the past and just designate these as village.
Yeah.
With village, which the same zoning as the village, which will encourage mixed use. So those are the three components of the district reorganization. So I'd like to, at least take these two articles and run them past town meeting, and whether they, it'd still be up to the selectmen whether we do this now or in the fall, but these articles would be ready. So.
You mean to
did you
run
mean
it through town council,
or
Yeah, town
you-
council, but also the
Yeah.
selectmen are still,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
selectmen are still the gatekeepers of the bond.
Yeah, I mean, just because we put it to town council, it doesn't mean we can't amend it in the future.
Oh,
It's
no,
just,
that's, yeah, I
it's just
just
let's
want
run it
to,
through the wash and see if there's any things that they find regarding it that would need to be changed,
Yeah.
and then,
I don't think the concepts are hard. It's the logistics of just making sure then that all the corresponding sections of the bylaw change. And that, again, that's what I'm working on with these appendixes, so that everybody will see what happens that, if you move Article 11 and 9, 10, 14 into one article. Okay. They just have to be renumbered as sections, and the same with 19 and 20. It's just the logistics of doing it, that's all. The two tables of Article 4 and Article 5, it's just, again, we'll have much less commercial districts, and it'll be simpler, and it's just adopting the same uses and dimensions for highway business and waterfront business respectively. So it's just making sure we catch all the other changes that come with it, I think, is the biggest thing. So,
yes,
all right. So with that said, I would appreciate
let's
to
move
have
it
a
on.
vote that the two reorganization articles, ZBC 1 and 2, be sent to town council for review.
You're talking about the harbor
Yeah, both.
district
Hold on.
consolidation and the highway business district consolidation,
Yeah, hold on one sec. Let me get the other thing.
and then the downtown becoming village for West
Yes.
Corner and Beechwood.
So here are the two articles again. ZBC 1 is the reorganization of the structure, consolidating articles. So we'd move down from 22 articles to 12. The village article moves into as a use. The other environmental related articles would, or other land use regulations could be consolidated. The alternative energy articles would be consolidated. 11 would become an open article, but later on, that's where we would dump. That
Well,
later
I have
on,
to-
that's
I
later.
haven't seen
I have to take a quick phone call, but I vote, if we take a vote to move it on to town council, the maps and everything,
Okay,
and I'll be right back.
okay.
I think it does no harm to send it to town council, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen the final language for the harbor district.
Yeah,
And
here
I
it
don't
is.
know if you're proposing any language changes for highway. And
No,
I would say, you kind of just want to look at the uses and setbacks that are required now. Like
that's why I sent all of that material around to everybody on Sunday. There's no functional change to it. In the
well, at the
harbor,
harbor, there has to be a functional
well,
change in what's allowed
in the
and what
harbor,
isn't.
well, the waterfront business uses is the widest part of the harbor to begin with, and the dimensions, as I said, do not differ from downtown business. The light industry is different, has larger dimensions, but it also makes no sense where it's located. So it's really comparing the waterfront business to the downtown business and just getting rid of downtown business. And again, we're killing the overlay because we don't want to expand mixed use. On 3A, it's returning those light industry and technology business districts, which have larger dimensional requirements, back to highway business that they once were, and nothing else would change. So the language is very specific in each of these articles that, the consolidation on 3A would have all the same uses and boundaries as the current highway business district.
Including the required residential setback, like the technology business butts into uninhabited residential areas.
I don't know that it does, but
In Whitney, like Whitney Woods is behind technology business district.
yeah, but that's zoned open space now.
I'm not sure. I think it's residence B.
No,
But again, the thing is, I would I think it makes sense to go through those together at some point. It doesn't have to be tonight.
Yeah, all right, well,
But if all we're doing is recommending that whatever draft you have gets
yeah, I'd like to
at
run
the
it by
council
council and see where we are, yeah.
for review, then the next step would be
Right.
sending it on to the selectmen for
Yeah, I mean, that, again,
discussion and
the selectmen know that this is here, they may say, well, why don't you just do it in the fall when all is done? And, okay, you know, if that's what they say, that's what they say.
Right.
It kind of, it's that, you know, how much we do now is a function of how much we're gonna do on Article 5, which we're gonna get to, but anyway, so the vote for what is EBC 2, which is the consolidation of the districts, would have, be multiple steps so that no one defeats the whole thing. So the highway consolidation is this, and it would eliminate Article 17 because the TOD district would go. The harbor would eliminate Article 22 because that's the overlay. The only change in the harbor is a proposal to change the boundaries that we do not have to do. And the only thought about changing, you know, bringing the Legion and the Yacht Club into waterfront business slash what I now would call the harbor district is to ungrandfather their uses. They're both commercial or, you know.
hey, Dom, nobody says grandfather anymore. Apparently
I
it's like
know,
a
you know,
racist term.
no, no. And do you know,
Sorry.
today I had an interview for an administrative job with the housing court. And we used to use the Latin phrase, Mike will know this phrase, pro se, for litigants that represent themselves, and it's a Latin word for that. No, 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 no. That phrase is no longer in style. Now you
What?
have to say,
Why can't you say pro se anymore, Tom?
I don't know, because I guess pro se litigants don't understand what pro se means, but they are now SRLs, self-represented litigants. That is the new term of art. A friend of mine who's a housing court attorney. Don't say pro se in your interview. Call them self-represented. So things change. Yes, these are like, I don't know what they're called now, reserved rights. But anyway, 88 Summer and 99 Howard Gleason are either in commercial or institutional use right now. They're pre-existing non-conforming uses in the districts they're in. They can be included in the harbor district or not. It's not, it's just a thought. That's the only boundary change in all of this. And then the village would be just expanded to replace what's left of downtown business. And then that makes our list of the main districts small. We'd go from
So
something
right
like,
now, zoning board of appeals reviews downtown business,
do they?
don't they?
Well, they review, they do, well, we
It's
would do
SP
village.
as opposed to
Yeah,
SPP.
no, planning board would do village, obviously, so any project in the village and now in Beechwood and West Corner, but we got the Beechwood one anyway. The zoning board does special permits. I think the only place they still do special permits is the harbor in waterfront business, so now they would have the whole harbor. They would have the special permit jurisdiction in the harbor. And the planning board would have it somewhere else. I mean, that's a change to talk, that's a, you know, that's division of special permit authority goes back, I think, from the beginning of the bylaw. That's a change we need not deal with right now. It's not critical. It hasn't created problems, but that's how it would play out in the future. And I believe 3A is within planning board jurisdiction because it also includes site plan review. So, all right, so and then our overlay districts, you know, would be down to these three. Of course, then we're adding the
Yeah, everything under DB is SP and everything under VB is SPP.
right. So it
So
means
would-
that
that
yeah,
would-
the only change.
If you consolidate the district, what is your thinking? Does it make sense to have those little
No,
districts become a part of the planning boards?
Yeah, so
jurisdiction?
where there would be village designation, it would be the planning board's jurisdiction. Where it would be harbor designation, it would be the zoning board.
Right, I mean, Beechwood and West Corner and it are tiny districts,
Right.
but right now they're under the zoning
Well,
board
I don't know that they are
special
because
permit. They are, I've just looked at the table.
we just permitted Beechwood one, so I don't know how that happened.
That was as a site plan review. We still do site plan reviews, so.
Yeah, all right.
But
Well, that
but
would
not
be the,
SP.
that would be the
And
switch.
and Mike, do you think the zoning board of appeals would get excited about losing jurisdiction over these tiny little DB districts?
And gaining.
You know, I can only speak for myself. I wouldn't, but you know, maybe other members of the board would differ with my feeling on
All
this.
right, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, because then they also gain jurisdiction in the harbor. And the zoning board would now have exclusive special permit jurisdiction in the harbor, which is fine by me. They can have it. They will direct the harbor's redevelopment, and the planning board will direct everybody else's. That's fine. All right. With all that said, I'll make
But it's
more-
worth the discussion, probably maybe getting Woody and.
yeah,
for
well, what I'm going
the
to.
planning board public hearings at the very
Yeah,
least.
the menu, the memo that will send this to town council tomorrow morning will copy the select board as the last one did as well. I'll copy the zoning board. So they can start seeing it now, but that's also why we have Mike. So, anyway, so with that said, all in favor of moving these to council,
Council review, Clark Brewer, aye.
Callahan and I.
Michael Dickey, aye.
And Dave, we wanted it.
And we- Is it a 3-member, a majority now?
Dave put in his vote before.
He already voted.
All right, so now. Again, I want to, we have some time before Clark has to bail. Yeah, Clark, if you bail, we don't have quorum, so. All right, let me stop the share of this. Let me.
Dave may be back by then.
All right, so back to. Again, parking, I'm going to try to start working on parking maybe tonight. I may take an hour or two and start playing with it. Again, right now, all I know about, I got to look at the judge's diagnostic of Article 7, and all I know is we have to add the parking requirements for the housing choice overlay. But anything else, you know, like I said, I know one select board member is hot to trot on the village's requirements, and I guess I got to touch base with Cassie and see what other things she has to recommend that her research did. But anyway, so getting to what would be. And Cassandra, by the way, I'm just hoping you're keeping on top of town council. Speed is of the essence in their review here.
Yes, I am.
All right, so gosh, what a mess this is. This is getting to be a mess. Okay, now on Article 5, I want to see if we can put aside some things that we can put aside. So right now we do have a kind of buffer zoning for the okay. So the first critical thing about the idea of the buffer zone zoning, and again, just to remind everybody, this was a suggestion of one select person long ago to being concerned about development in the village and how close it comes to residences. I think what we don't have right now is a definition of what it is. And in the first go back, it was a confusion between the setback and the buffer zone and what is it. So the critical first step here is the definition of what it is. And I throw that definition out there for your discussion.
Well, you could use the transition area, you could call it a
Yeah, we don't
buffer
have to call it
zone.
buffer zone.
You could change that if
Yeah,
there
just
was
not,
a term of art that seemed to be more appropriate.
yeah, you know what, that makes sense only because buffer zone is used in the wetlands regs, and I'd rather probably. Let's see. Transition is probably the better.
But then people might get it confused with other terms.
All right, well,
There's a lot of excitement with trans uh terms these days.
okay, but
I
anyway,
want
in
to
the
call it the trans zone for sure.
yeah,
But a transition zone or area or transition setback
or border, we could call it border zone, something like that.
district edge. I don't know. I'm just
Yeah,
trying
all
to
right,
think
well,
out loud here.
let's agree that we're gonna get away from. Get away from. But the definition is key to understanding what it is. So it's an area within the commercial districts. So it's running inside from the boundary, not running across the boundary into the residential area. And I know Clark, you've made comments about that. At the boundary of an R district in which the underlying building side and rear setbacks and height differ to provide a step back effect.
Well, we haven't really talked about the edges of our zoning districts and whether they should be rethought.
In terms of what, setbacks?
Whether some districts should increase or some districts should
All right, well,
retract.
this hasn't,
We haven't thought it through.
no,
or
this hasn't
discussed
been
it
an
at all.
exercise, this hasn't been an exercise in changing any of the dimensional requirements of any of our districts.
Right, but is with some study, would we want to increase the village given our druthers?
No,
Because
well, you expressed this at the last meeting, you expressed sort of a sentiment that we should perhaps be doing things to allow more development, when I think the widespread sentiment is to allow less
in the village,
all over. I don't think there's any strong sentiment in town to, I think maintaining what we have is fine. Maybe
well, I
being
mean,
more
the market,
restrictive is
I'm sorry to
fine, but
interrupt, but
there's no
market
consensus.
forces are such that when you limit, it's supply and demand, right? When you limit supply, then demand goes up and prices go up. And having been on the master plan committee and the growth and development committee, which was the first master plan committee with you, that there was always discussion of a balance, but balanced growth, not managed growth, but not controlled growth, but managed growth, that we like every other town in Massachusetts has Prop 2.5, and we wanna create some growth that maintains increases in tax base. And how we do that potentially in the future is through zoning. If we do the opposite of that, then the tax burden will or may go up for individual property owners. And I think that's something that needs to be explored with a strategy.
All right. I would, well, again, I don't think there's any strong sentiment in the town whatsoever to increase, well, to bring such like the village and the harbor areas, to where they're little mini cities up to the boundaries, with higher buildings, bulkier buildings. I mean, just the sentiment that's brought forward this proposal is the exact opposite of that. And I don't think that realistically, our commercial tax base is something like I don't know, 7%,
Yeah,
7%
7.
in the, and it's, gone a little ways in either direction on that line. And I don't think there's a great sentiment unless we have larger scale development on 3A that we're ever going to see it increase substantially.
Well, certainly
I don't think we're going to squeeze
the
extra
regional
bucks.
sewer system going down 3A could expand those existing uses significantly.
It might.
I don't know what the status of that regional sewer. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I think the sewer department has all the pipes in place to take Situate stuff and send it to Hull.
I think that my understanding is that that is all on hold. And that is why, one of the reasons why
Situate wants our moorings.
Situate and Cohasset are currently at war. Because
Oh, I thought it was
Situate,
all oyster.
well, that's only part of it. The, my understanding, it's wider than that. There's, I've heard it said that Situate wants to do more development. I think personally think that's the absolute wrong approach, but you see what they developed at the old proving grounds and the cement site off of Hatherley.
Well, you look at North Situate and whatever they got there, a bunch of failed septic systems in a watershed area. They want access to sewer because nobody can do anything with their properties.
Yeah, I mean, and that's their thing, and they need that sewer connection for us
But
to
at some
do.
point, the state could just say, "Hey, look, we own 3A. We're gonna take the sewer pipe and go down 3A and down 228 and call it a day."
Yeah,
If Cohasset isn't gonna play ball.
they could, but right now we're not. What I understand, we're not playing ball, and that's part of the wider warfare that's going on. So, but if that sewer came, the advantage to that is that it might encourage redevelopment and more intense development of our plazas on 3A.
Sure.
It might spur, you brought it up, the topic is that we have a stretch of residential 3A, as does Situate, by the way. That perhaps there'll be impetus to eliminate all of that and let all of 3A go commercial. I don't personally see that ever happening, but it's possible.
Well, with the potential connection to North Situate, and the train station, with the reworking of Route 3A there, the southern section by Mass Dot next year, that's, it's gonna be a different environment that people may see more potential in.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
beyond,
anyway, getting back to this, the definition, and for the moment I called it border zone. As you can see, I made some quick changes. I think the little definition I wrote is explaining the intent. Whether somebody else can word it better is, that's when we'll get into review of other boards and town council. The concept of it is to create, the zone itself be 25 feet back, and I don't think this is radical because the setback right now is 10 feet in the village. I believe it's in the harbor as well. And so instead of it being 10 feet in this first 25, within that first 25-foot area, it would be 15 feet, which I don't think is a radical change. It's moving a setback by 5 feet. What would change the height of both the accessory, which is 15-foot maximum, and the primary, which is 35-foot maximum. So a property that is bordering the residential districts in the village, which is probably the more feasible for development at the moment, would be, would sort of have like a stepped effect at the boundary. For example, if the Red Lion were torn down and rebuilt to something different, it would just be stepped back a little bit on its height and set back 5 foot more. where it abuts the residential properties on South Main Street. I don't think the harbor properties will be affected at all, except the ones on the land side of Elm Street, and one of the, the property that borders the residential area there is part of the hotel project, so that's already being redeveloped. And the Legion would be the other property. Everything else in the waterfront business would be on the other side of the street from the residential districts and wouldn't be subject to this, so.
For your definition of border zone, would you want to change the third last word to abutting residential districts? Because you say property and structure. I mean, I'm not sure that's the right word. I think you're talking about residential district. There's an edge between a residential district.
Yeah, you're probably right. It should be consistent because I used district in front of the same sentence, so, okay. And as far as the measurements go, I mean, it's what people's thought about. I don't think
I don't know.
I don't think it's super radical.
No, it's incremental. What about allowing waivers to that for good reason? We allow a front setback option in the village bylaw.
Well, it wouldn't change the village bylaw. So other than
No,
putting,
I'm using it as an example.
Yeah.
With your border zones, could we allow applicants to propose something different for good cause? Or would it be absolute? No closer,
well,
unless they have something that's existing that's closer. which would
Again,
be existing non-conforming, right?
you know from my positions on the planning board, when we get proposals for quote unquote waivers all the time when the waiver isn't allowed in the bylaw. I'm not a big fan of waivers. What's the point of having the bylaw? I know you talk
Well,
about, I know you talk about flexibility all the time, but there is a point where a community
building
can say,
in some flexibility is useful. I mean,
no, it isn't. Not if you're
the
the
zoning board
resident.
of appeals knows for special permits where some of them make sense and some of them don't. Some of them are too much of an ask, but
Well,
what you're setting up is a zoning board of appeals variance or special permit from the village or highway or harbor district for existing conditions and
well, any project in the village and the harbor would be subject to the special permit to begin with. In Harbor's case, the zoning board and the
right. It's a
village
different kind of special permit though. Like in the village, if somebody has an existing structure that's instead of 15 feet is currently 10 feet and 15 feet is what's required, then
they're
they could
grandfathered.
potentially move the structure. I mean, look at the
No,
one we
that
looked at
part,
last
that's
week.
not the case. If somebody was
31 South Main Street, there would be a special permit from the zoning board of appeals and a special permit for the planning board.
no, there wouldn't be. I mean,
Again, if an
An
existing
existing-
non-conforming setback, you create
and
a new non-conformity with this overlay
yeah,
or border.
yeah.
Well,
You might, but
honestly,
an existing building is going to continue to be grandfathered.
hey, you just said grandfather.
I know I did. Until I decide what the verb is for whatever they
Well,
call it.
I mean, it
pre-existing
might make
structure.
sense to take an aerial photograph of the village and see how this might play itself out.
I can tell you how it would play itself out. It would play itself out if there is any redevelopment of the Red Lion site, the sites across the street along Border Street, is Brook Street. If they were to be redeveloped.
Yeah, I
And-
mean, in terms of what would be a special permit ZBA or special permit planning board.
I'm not understanding what you're saying about a special permit for the ZBA.
Yeah, if you have an existing non-conforming setback, for example, 10 foot to the district, the residential district in the village, then, and you wanted to extend that, then hypothetically, the zoning board of appeals would look at your extension of a existing non-conforming
No, I
setback.
think that is-
And actually, if it's non-conforming currently, you can increase for single family your non-conformity with a special permit.
Yeah, but we're not talking about single family, we're talking about commercial development. And
Well,
I
you're still
think-
allowed to build single families in the village.
I
district.
I believe that the case of the village zoning, I mean, that's why it was specifically rewritten that way it was, is that there's a single stop special permit and site plan review. Uh, within the planning board. I think that even the planning board under the village zoning can deal with nonconformities under Article 8.
Are you
We're not-
sure? Because
I'm not
we've gone
sure
through
because
this-
I'm
we've
not
gone
sure
through this
because we,
before over the
I'm not
years,
sure.
and I think we've deferred to zoning board of appeals for
I'm not
existing
sure, I'm
non-conforming.
not sure we have. I'm not sure we have because everything we've been dealt with, at least in my time, has been new development, pretty much.
Well, the 31 South Main Street that we just looked at, that was a combination of new and existing.
Yeah, but it didn't call for any Article 8 relief. And if it did, we missed the boat on it, but I don't think it did. So, I mean, again, this is something that is brought, it's never part of my original redraft. It was brought to my attention as a request from somebody, and I would like to just throw it out there and, rather than just the 3 or 4 of us chewing on it, is bring it to the zoning board and the select board, and see how everybody thinks about it. And don't like the idea, fine. Don't like the idea. We'll just have that kind of border zoning on 3A and that'll be it. Which we have today. That's fine by me, but this is what it would look like. It could be different. The numbers could be different, but it's the intent is a step back effect on the boundaries, and so I think this accomplishes that, and I think we should throw it out there for further discussion and review. I mean, I think we've all sat here and addressed what the issues are. There's not a lot of issues we're missing here. It's pretty straightforward. So with that, I would suggest also moving CBC 5.1 on to, moving it on to the process for review.
I'll second that motion, Tom.
Okay,
I mean, I don't know if it's perfect what you have on the paper, but I like the concept in theory anyway.
Yeah, I mean, again, in explaining it to the community, we can tell them that for decades, we've had this concept on 3A and it rarely comes into play, but we've had it. It's a much bigger buffer on 3A, but I think, as the village gets redeveloped along the edges, I think there's a number of people that have concerns, and 3 of them live there. 3 of our town leaders live in that area, so that's where some of this concern is arising. And yes, we shouldn't cave to the requests of one person, but I don't think there's a problem bringing it out there for discussion with everybody. And I'm sure Woody is going to have a lot to say about it. You may think it's great, you may think it stinks. And that's, again, it was never part of my original rewrite, so I'm okay however it plays out, but I think it's worth bringing out there for everybody's review and discussion, so. All right, well then with that, all in favor of moving it along? Aye,
Clark Brewer, aye.
on Callahan, aye.
Mike Dickey, aye.
All right. I don't know where David is. We'll get David's phone in. All right, again, 716, I don't want to go into the details of frontage or the coverage yet. I am going to try to have a discussion, just so you know, with people from Merrill Engineering are in my building. And I'm going to try to get a better layman's sense of how square footage, two-dimensional square footage that we measure things now and three-dimensional FAR relate to each other. Like, is there an easy way to convert one to the other?
Hey, Tom, that thing we looked at on Sawyer, the large home review, the other night, that,
Yeah.
would not conform to the 1.0. For example, it's a 53,000 square foot lot and they're proposing 5,600 square feet of space. So if they wanted to be
thought somebody-
conforming, they would have to lop off 300 square feet of their.
I thought, well, if that,
Proposed.
yeah, if that's how it plays out, that's what I need to understand the math better myself.
Well, yeah, definitely having some examples.
But I didn't hear anybody, as a matter of fact, I thought on one of the applications we had the other night, somebody made the point of saying the FAR was only like 0.5 something. I mean, my own gut is that the sweet spot is 0.8, not 1.0, but 0.8 in a residential setting. So anyway,
So that would make that particular house be even smaller.
I don't know.
Well, 0.8, it's 53,000 square foot lot. At 1.0, you'd be limited to 5,300 square feet.
Well, if you
This one was 5,600 square feet.
yeah, all right.
You'd have to
Well,
lop off 300. If it's 0.8, you'd have to lop off even more.
all right. Well, if that's again, that's your understanding of the math, I'll defer to that for now. I want to understand it myself. So
Well, it's
I
1.0. I mean,
I don't know that that's how
FAR
it works. You're equating then one, I don't know, point of FAR is 10,000 square feet. I don't know what the number is. Anyway,
well, actually, no, if it's 1.0, if FAR is 1.0, then you'd be allowed 53,000 square feet of house. So
right.
it would, if it was 0.1, then you'd have to lop something off.
All right. All right. Well, like I said, I'm going to try to get a better understanding before our next meeting. So maybe I can explain that. Whoever I talk to, I'm going to try, again, trying to get free advice, number one. And number two is try to reduce it into some language that we can explain to ourselves and to other board members and to the public in an easy way to understand.
That sounds
The-
good.
The only other thing on Article 5 that I wanted to talk about was the large home review process. So when it was originally conceived, it was conceived by our consultant on the 2004 master plan, Judy Barrett, who Lauren Lind went to go work for. And at the time, we had some concrete examples of mansionization going on in Norwell. There was a well-known small ranch house. I believe it was owned by a police officer. And while the house was still sitting there, this giant, massive, wide new house was going up behind it and showed the stark difference of what was being built. And I had a friend who bought a house in Norwell, in Situate, a part of Situate on the west side of Situate. And, it was funny that it was skinny. It was only like a room or a room and a half deep from front to back, but it was long and wide, it was to get the impression of size and everything. It was something. But the idea originally was to try to make large home review a special permit process. And for various reasons that didn't work, and mostly because we picked 3,500 square feet as a measure, and that would otherwise be allowed as of right. So you couldn't superimpose a special permit process onto a as of right process. And now we've increased the threshold to 4,000 square feet. But again, the process and the review is essentially a residential site plan review. Having been a big champion of large home review when it was first done in 04, 05, 06, whenever it got finally passed, I just think it's become a useless and unnecessarily antagonistic tool between neighbors. And so what I was thinking of in the concept of replacing it is to actually, all right, we switch to an FAR, we pick what the right FAR number is. That is what you can build as of right. an FAR, whatever the number is, let's say 0.7, 0.75. It might differ from RA, B, and C. They might have different FARs. But that's the number, and that's what you could build as of right. But like anything else in the dimensional table, you go over that, you're into variance territory, and current zoning board's policy and the correct policy is those should not be given out willy-nilly. So I was thinking that the thing to replace that, so if this is your concept of waiver or flexibility, so somebody wants to build something that's really large, on a smaller size lot that would exceed the allowed FAR, that we create a certain zone, let's say 110% of the allowed FAR, allow that to happen by special permit, and then anything over that would be the variance process. So today, under our current dimensional zones, it's one or the other. You're either as of right or you're variance. We don't have a gray area in the middle, a flexible area in the middle. Here, I'm suggesting we might want to do that. And the trade-off would be then FAR would go away. I mean, large home review would go away because otherwise we just don't need a residential site plan review process. I think there's other places where if we want to mandate dark sky lighting and we want to, we want to
We
make sure
put it,
plants.
we put it in our bylaw. We put dark sky in.
Yeah, we put it in our regulations, is frankly,
Yeah.
put it. These are, the common things that Clark, that you and I deal with on the planning board and large home review as conditions or things we address. Those are easy regulatory things that we could apply to every house, whether it's small or large, and we should be doing that. We should be making sure landscaping works and traffic works and lighting is, appropriate lighting, and we're all hot to trot on dark sky at the moment. So, all I want to do here tonight with this is again, it's dependent obviously on what the final FAR number is for each of the districts, but to embrace the concept that when we set that FAR, which will be the as of right limit, do we also then build in a special permit process for a house that would exceed the allowable FAR by, let's say, again, 110%. I don't think it should go higher than that, but let's say a range of 110% to 125%. And to build in a possible special permit process for a larger house than would be allowed as of right, rather than have everything that's over the as of right limit automatically default to variance. I don't have a giant problem with that in response to the obvious pushback that's going to be, you're trying to limit housing size and blah, 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 blah. Frankly, I think we switched to FAR and we picked the right number. We're not going to change anything in Cohasset. I think we're still going to see sizable houses because I think, we're going to end up basing the FAR number based on, our averages today. And I've talked in the past about the pre-2000 average house size in Cohasset and the post-2000 average, because there's a marked difference between the two. But we're going to pick a number that's going to equate. I'm sure we're going to do this. We're going to pick a number that equates to what is going on in Cohasset right now. We're going to try to prohibit something going crazy larger in proportion to its size, but we're not going to go, we're not going to go back to 1960 house sizes on a lot. I can
all the residential zoning districts allow 20% building coverage. So basically your baseline would be 0.4, is that right? 0.4?
Well, again, that's, and under the concept in the previous vote.
For FAR?
Yeah, the previous,
0.4
so
would be
here,
base?
now here, if you look at this today we do, lot coverage by, and I'm just changing the definitions of the terms to make them a little clearer and user-friendly, but
Well,
these are the limits we use today.
Yes, the structure is 20% that's coverage, assuming it's a 2-story house, which
Correct.
is a fair assumption.
I am what I'm
That would be
proposing. No,
FAR 0.4, right?
what I'm proposing here is continuing to use two-dimensional coverage with lot coverage. But then the floor area ratio is to deal with the building's bulk. Now, an engineer may tell me those are inconsistent with each other. I don't want to, but in terms of the lot coverage, you know, we have a clearing limit, then we have this building limit. I don't want to encourage, you know, obviously we don't want to encourage property line to property line building. And with, at least with the clearing limits, we stop that. But, you know, does still keeping these two coverage limits of 20 and 30% kind of defeat whatever the FAR number is you put in, or make the
Well, it's just
maximum?
a
Yeah.
new restriction is all it
Yeah,
is. We gotta meet this, this, and
again,
that.
it's an engineering understanding of how they all work together that I want to refine, you know, in my own head.
Yeah,
But
but you know, just to, I mean, it's 0.4, right? It's 40 FAR of a house that has 20% lot coverage, primary structure coverage is a 0.4 FAR,
you say that, I don't know
not
that.
including a basement.
Yeah, you say that and I don't know that. That's what I just, and in my own head, and I think for the benefit of everybody else, we all need to get that into our heads. And you know, the problem, you know, the thing we're trying to do with floor area ratio really is to do, you know, regulate the house size on a cubic foot measurement rather than a square foot measurement. And unfortunately, the quirks of Massachusetts zoning law says we can't do that because that would be the illegal regulation of interior house size. And yet we can do floor area ratio, which seems to be the same result, is measuring the cubic
I mean,
area of a
the
building.
problem where the lot coverage and FAR is, and all these existing non-conforming stuff in the village down by the harbor, Elm Street, you know, small lots, big houses. That's where it becomes an issue. So, I mean, if you're talking about 1.0 or 0.8 FAR, uh, lot coverage or structural coverage at 20% kind of already dealt with it, and FAR would be irrelevant.
Yeah, it might be, and that's what again, I think
But the thing is, you're dinging the people who have the least amount of options with their particular property, and I don't want to bring up examples because I have to run, but
except that I think
I'm not sure what you've achieved by
well,
talking a big FAR game at
well, I
0.8,
think,
other than punishing the people that have tight lots and
all
no
right, well,
options for increasing the value of their properties.
yeah, no, my only thought about that is that I have a concept that most of RA is developed. Probably the majority of RB is developed, but it's the areas of RB and RC that are undeveloped at this point, or the possible subject of tear downs that really we're addressing here. I don't think this is going to adversely impact anybody in RA because I think they're all built out to begin with, and they're all
Well, I mean, look at a conforming 60,000 square foot lot in a residence C with a 20% structural coverage. That's on 2 stories. 20% of 60,000 is 12,000. That's a 24,000 square foot house. Who,
Yeah.
who other than the Oaks has a 24,000 square foot house? Nobody, right?
True, but we just saw 10 plus being built on Little Harbor.
But that's an FAR of 0.4.
Is it?
Yes,
I don't recall that.
40%. 40%.
I'm glad.
It's
I'm,
20% times 2.
I'm glad you're bringing this up because, you know, again, I'm throwing out concepts without having a full yet engineering understanding myself, and these may not work, and that's fine.
Well, again, and I'll say it again. I think you're dinging the people that have the tightest lots and no ability to do anything with them. That's maybe it's just the way it is, but all these existing non-conforming situations that the ZBA sees all the time, the tight
Yeah.
neighborhoods,
All right, well,
non-conforming.
I mean, that's not the intent to ding. Anyway, before we go, the concept of ditching large home review in exchange for a special permit process. And again, if we don't go FAR, we'll have to reword how we do that, you know, where the cutoff line is. But is that concept something that everybody would run with?
I don't know, Tom. I don't see as large home review equaling FAR. The original idea, I think, of large home review was so the neighbors could see their house before like the framing was done, ask questions. You know, like
Yeah,
the
but-
example we had the other night, the architect designed the retaining walls too high, not conforming to zoning, and the neighbor was freaked out about a 6-foot high retaining wall right on the property line. Good reason. Not on her property line, on the adjacent
Yeah,
property,
but there's nothing we could do to stop it. That's the
50
problem.
feet away. Well, no, zoning doesn't support retaining walls on the property line. Of that height. It only supports 3-foot high retaining walls.
All right, okay.
But again, the neighbor was concerned about it, and turns
All
out
right,
it
no, I
didn't
get
conform to
it. I
zoning,
get it.
and well, I
We're-
mean, that's what Dave said large home review is all about, is a last ditch effort to make sure there's no zoning mistakes.
All right,
I guess I'm confused about, because I agree with Clark. I think that the large home review process adds some value, tries to act as a social lubricant between neighbors. But I'm also hearing you say, Tom, that you see kind of this FAR process as replacing large home review.
no, let me, it's not whether we have FAR or not. Let's say we don't adopt FAR and we keep our current two-dimensional restrictions on house size. Even if we keep what we have today, what I'm saying is when you hit the dimensional limit today, you would have to get a variance. And I'm just saying for something that is larger than what's allowed as of right, but not uber large, there would be a little area in there where you could get that permitted by special permit rather than having to attempt a variance. And only for something that's super large are you going to the variance process. That's all I'm saying. The large home review is essentially a residential site plan review. It has zero teeth to impose anything. We do our conditions, but if we were pushed back on, either that or a large home review needs to be rewritten in some way to me that is clearer as a site plan review process, and just use the words and say the words and say, this is residential site plan review for houses of X size. And maybe give it a little more criteria that it looks at, but I just have seen it in, again, it's the lament for the last 20 years. It has no teeth to it as a site plan review
Well,
process.
it has a little bit of teeth. We did add a little bit of teeth in 2017 to say we could make conditions, and that was
Yeah.
always the site plan review thing is you
Yeah,
could
because for the
condition
first 12
crap
years-
out of something,
No, I
even
know
though
that.
we don't, and get what you wanted out of it.
I know, it was part of, it came out of the citizen articles I was done the year before, because for the first 12 years of large home review, we had no criteria with which to say anything about landscaping, traffic, or lighting. There wasn't anything written in the bylaw.
I know, and Al Moore would sit there and say, hey, you know what? We're only gonna recommend to the building inspector that we issue a permit, but we'd like everybody to be able to see what this is. So you have your neighbors see
know,
what you want to do ahead of time.
I
Yeah, I
remember
gotta
this.
run. I'm sorry. I
No,
apologize.
all right, I'm sorry. We'll leave on that note. So
Oh, thanks.
quickly, Cassandra, when's our next meeting?
Next Monday.
Next Monday. All right. I'll have some more refinements and thoughts about where to go. I'll circulate the things we voted for tonight to where they need to be circulated. I appreciate all that. And we'll move on with thoughts about Article 5. So
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Clark Brewer, aye.
I didn't hear Tom. I assume he said
Tom
aye.
Callahan, aye, yes, sorry.
Mike Dickey, aye as well. Thanks,
Good night,
gentlemen.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
Cassandra.
I'll
Good
see
night,
you-
everyone.
See you next Monday. Thank you all.